So you want to boost your English, right? And kind of get a grasp on what happens in your brain while you're learning. Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Sounds good to me.
You sent over a couple of really interesting things for us to look at.
Okay.
There's this guide from FluentU about actively thinking in English. And then there's this TED-Ed Talk transcript by Mia Nakamura.
Yeah.
And she dives deep into how good bilingualism is for your brain.
Right.
So what we want to do is sort of connect those two for you.
Okay.
Give you some solid techniques to sharpen those English skills of yours. But also paint a clearer picture of what's going on in your brain while you're at it.
I like it.
Now, you mentioned that you wanted to, absorb all this info without getting overwhelmed, and you're looking for, like, takeaways that you can actually use. Right?
Yeah.
And you want that broader understanding, too, of course.
Absolutely.
So let's just jump right in.
Sure.
Let's start with that FluentU article. The first strategy they talk about is surprisingly simple.
Right.
It's thinking in single words.
Okay.
Just that.
Interesting.
So the article suggests that you consciously label things around you in English, especially when your mind is kind of quiet, maybe just a few minutes, a couple times a day.
Right.
It's about making that connection, that direct connection between what you see and the English word for it.
Makes sense.
Oh.
So you're not trying to make complex sentences right off the bat. You're just forming those initial connections.
Right.
You're associating those simple English words with your everyday life, your experience.
Exactly, yeah. And the article actually has some really cool ideas for making this stick.
Okay, like what?
Like setting reminders on your phone.
Oh, interesting.
With English words on them, or even turning it into a game.
Oh, a game.
Yeah. Like give yourself a little reward if you practice consistently.
That's clever. I like that.
Yeah.
Engaging.
They also talk about leaving little notes around the house.
Oh, like Post-it notes.
Yeah, exactly. Like mirror on the bathroom mirror. It's so easy. It's an effortless way to keep those words around you and build your vocab without any pressure.
And it's passive, right? You're not really, it's just there.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just absorbing it.
And the article points out that, as you build this little base of words, they naturally start connecting into simple thoughts.
It's like, it reminds me of how we learn our first language.
Right.
Through labeling things, making associations. So by actively naming things in English, you're kind of strengthening that pathway between the word and what it means.
Yeah.
So you don't have to translate it in your head all the time.
Exactly, yeah.
In your native language.
Okay, so the next step FluentU recommends is narrating your day. Yeah, like you're doing the voiceover for your own life.
Okay.
Like describing what you're doing as you're going through your day.
I like that.
Yeah.
Kind of puts you in the director's chair of your own movie.
Right, exactly.
So you're building on those single words by adding in simple sentences and descriptions.
Yeah.
But the real key here is that you're actively creating those thoughts in English.
Yeah.
You're not just watching things happen. You're putting words to them.
Right.
Even if it's just in your head.
Yeah.
And the article gives some nice examples like the sun is rising or I'm making coffee.
Right. Simple, yeah.
Easy, accessible. And they suggest doing this when your mind is clear, so you can really focus on it.
Right. So then we move on to making up conversations.
Okay.
And this seems like a really great way to get ready for real life conversations. And to really solidify your English in different situations. So the article suggests picking a topic, maybe something work-related, or even just practicing how you would order food at a restaurant.
Yeah.
So you're essentially rehearsing these dialogues in your head.
So smart.
And not only are you practicing the language itself, but you're also building up your confidence.
Right. For when you actually need to use it.
Yeah, exactly. And the example they give about the restaurant is perfect.
What is it?
You're imagining what you would say and what the other person might say back.
Right. Back and forth.
Yeah. And they even suggest that later on you try these conversations out loud.
Oh, okay.
Maybe with a language partner or something.
You can get that real practice.
Yeah, exactly. Now, here's a strategy that really stood out to me.
Okay.
It's called getting creative with language.
Interesting.
And it's all about expressing yourself even when you don't know the exact word.
Yeah.
The example they use is losing your key.
Okay.
Instead of just getting stuck, you describe the situation. So you might say, I can't open the door.
Right. Instead of I lost my key.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Smart. So they call this circumlocution.
Circumlocution.
Yeah. It's basically talking around a word.
Okay. So it's like it keeps you going.
Right.
Keeps you fluent.
Exactly. And the article gives some really helpful prompts for this.
Oh, good.
Like thinking about what the word is similar to.
Okay.
Or what it's used for,
Right.
or where you might find it.
I see.
And they suggest playing games like taboo or catchphrase.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, to practice this skill.
That's a good way to make it fun.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, building vocabulary is obviously essential.
Correct.
And FluentU has a very hands-on approach for this.
Okay.
So they suggest keeping a notebook or a note app to jot down any words you come across that you don't know.
Okay.
But the key is what you do next.
Okay.
You got to look them up and look them up in English.
In English.
Yeah, which we'll talk about more in a bit.
Okay.
And then you got to actively try to use them.
Gotcha.
So what's really important here is that you're engaging with those new words.
Right. You're not just writing them down and forgetting about them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the article recommends grouping similar words together.
Okay.
And then really making an effort to use them in your thoughts and even in your internal narration throughout the day.
Right. Keep them top of mind.
Yeah.
So you can actually use them.
Yeah, exactly. And they mentioned some great resources for this too.
Okay, what are they?
Like Wordnik, dictionary.com, and vocabulary.com.
Got it.
You know, they're great for seeing words in real contexts and building your own word lists.
Really useful tools.
Yeah. They even mention their own platform, FluentU.
Oh, right.
It's a great way to see vocab in action through videos.
Makes sense.
Okay, and finally, the last tip from FluentU is to use an English-to-English dictionary whenever possible. This might seem like a small thing, but it can really change how you learn.
Okay, how so?
So the goal is to avoid that automatic translation back to your native language.
Right. Stay in the English world.
Exactly. So by using an English-to-English dictionary, you're forcing your brain to stay within that English framework.
Makes sense.
Yeah. You're not just looking for a quick translation.
Right.
You're exploring the nuances of the English word.
Yeah.
Through other English words and definitions. They even suggest deleting those native language dictionary apps.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Just to break that reliance on translation.
Cold turkey.
Yeah, kind of. And they recommend some learner dictionaries.
Okay.
Like Vocabulary and Merriam-Webster Learner's Dictionary.
Got it.
You know, they use simpler language in their definitions.
Makes it easier to grasp.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So those are some really solid practical strategies.
Yeah, lots to work with there.
Right. For actively thinking in English. Now let's shift gears a little bit and look at that TED-Ed talk transcript. Okay. Mia Nakamura starts off by pointing out that bilingualism is actually the global norm.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which is a pretty cool perspective, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of it that way.
And then she goes on to define what it means to know a language.
Okay.
She emphasizes how speaking, writing, listening, and reading are all connected.
Makes sense. They all work together.
Yeah, exactly. And then she introduces these 3 types of bilinguals.
3 types?
Yeah. Compound, coordinate, and subordinate.
Okay.
And she uses Gabriella's family as an example.
Okay.
So the point is that there's not just one way to be bilingual.
Right. Different paths to the same goal.
Yeah. People learn and use multiple languages in different ways.
Yeah.
And all those ways can lead to fluency and those cognitive benefits.
Right.
Yeah.
So like imagine a kid who grows up in a home where both parents speak different languages, right? It's close to both from the get-go.
Yeah.
So they often develop like one system for understanding the world.
Right.
With both languages kind of intertwined. And that's often called compound bilingualism.
Gotcha.
Now, someone who learns their first language at home and then a second one at school, they might develop separate mental representations for the same concept.
Yep.
Because they learn them in different contexts. That's coordinate.
Okay.
And then there's subordinate, where someone's always translating that second language through their first in their mind.
I see.
So it's like they're filtering through their dominant language.
Okay, so that distinction between the types is really helpful.
Yeah, it helps us understand how people experience bilingualism differently.
Exactly, yeah.
And Gabrielle and her family are like a real-life example of how these different paths work.
Right, right.
Okay, so the talk then goes into the critical period hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
It's this idea that kids learn languages easier.
Right.
Because their brains are more flexible.
Yeah.
And they use both hemispheres of their brain more actively when they're learning.
Yeah.
So while this theory's been around for a while, the talk also highlights some newer research.
Okay.
Suggesting that adults learning a second language might actually have less emotional bias when making decisions in that language.
Oh, that's fascinating.
It is, right.
Yeah.
It kind of challenges that traditional view.
Okay, and then we get into the actual changes that happen in a multilingual brain.
Right.
So Nakamura mentions that there's evidence of higher gray matter density.
Okay.
And gray matter is basically the part of your brain that's packed with nerve cells. So higher density could mean more connections and more processing power.
Right.
And they also found increased activity in certain brain regions.
Okay.
When someone's using a second language.
So it's like the brain is working out.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe one of the most well-known benefits is that bilingualism could delay the onset of Alzheimer's and dementia by up to 5 years, according to the research she cites.
That's huge.
Yeah. It's incredible to think that learning another language could be so protective for your brain.
Really underscores the long-term benefits of keeping your brain active.
Right. The talk also mentions that there used to be this idea that bilingualism was a disadvantage.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But thankfully, those early studies had some serious flaws.
Okay.
And newer, more rigorous research has debunked that.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. Okay, so the talk also goes into some more complex findings.
Okay.
Like bilinguals might sometimes be a bit slower in certain tasks that involve switching between languages.
Okay.
But the key takeaway is that bilingualism strengthens the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex.
The dorsolateral, what?
It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
But it's basically your brain's command center.
Okay.
It's responsible for planning, focusing, switching between tasks.
Right, yeah.
Filtering out distractions.
So really important stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So the talk makes it clear that while being bilingual might not make you, smarter in every single way, it definitely leads to a healthier brain, a more complex brain, and a more actively engaged brain.
That's a really powerful message.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just about communicating with more people. It's about what it does for your brain.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now let's connect these two things we've been talking about.
Right.
We have those practical techniques from FluentU for actively thinking in English. And then we have this overview of the brain benefits from the TED-Ed talk.
Right.
So how do these two relate to you, the listener?
Well, what's really fascinating is that those techniques from the FluentU article, for actively thinking in English, they actually mirror what a bilingual brain goes through all the time. So when you're narrating your day in English, or rehearsing conversations in your head, or finding creative ways to say things when you don't know the word, you're basically doing this mental juggling act.
Right.
That strengthens those executive functions.
Yeah.
The ones we talked about, related to that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex.
Right. So it's like you're switching back and forth between thinking about a concept and trying to say it in English.
Exactly, yeah. You're suppressing your native language. And you're problem solving when you hit a vocab gap.
Right.
And it's that mental exercise that gives bilingual people those cognitive benefits.
So basically, even these small, consistent efforts to think in English are making a difference.
Absolutely. They're contributing to those long-term cognitive advantages.
Yeah. Even if you don't feel like you're fluent in English yet.
Right.
And, the TED Talk encourages us to take that linguistic leap, no matter how small.
Yeah.
And FluentU gives us those accessible ways to start.
Yeah.
So even just thinking in single words or describing your morning routine in English, you're building a healthier, more adaptable brain.
It's those small, regular steps
Yeah.
that add up
Over time.
So to sum it all up, you now have these concrete steps to start thinking in English.
Right.
And you also have a deeper understanding of how that mental engagement, which is similar to what bilingual people do, can benefit your brain.
You can make your brain healthier.
Yeah.
Improve its function and make it more resilient.
And it's a journey, right?
Absolutely.
You don't have to be perfect right away.
It's a process.
Just like any skill, you'll get better with practice.
Yeah. The more you think in English, the stronger those cognitive benefits will become.
Right. So just keep at it.
Yeah, those small steps can lead to big progress.
So here's a final thought for you.
Okay.
Think about how shifting your inner monologue to English, even just those little thoughts you have throughout the day, it could be more than just a language learning tool. It could be a way to enrich your mind.
Right.
To make your brain more flexible and healthy in the long run.
Very cool.
It makes you wonder what other small daily habits might have these huge effects on our minds.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time.
See you then.